After 8 missing months, a millionaire discovered an incredible secret that transformed everything. Mark Stevens stood in the middle of an unremarkable street in Kansas, hands trembling as he clenched the faded map of his childhood. His heart raced, memories flooding back of a life he'd once cherished, now lost in his pursuit of wealth. Faces of his wife, Emily, and daughter, Lily, flickered in his mind like distant flames, a warmth he could barely remember feeling. How could he explain what had happened in those 8 months? The guilt clawed at him. In the fleeting moments of courage, he thought he'd solved life's puzzles, yet the weight of his absence loomed larger than any million-dollar deal. Once, he had been an idealistic teacher, sparking a love for learning in his students. But the app he developed? It had catapulted him from a modest life to instant millionaire status, turning the radical pedagogical ideas he'd cherished into cold, hard cash. The rush of success had felt intoxicating at first, but it soon morphed into a frantic sprint away from everything he cared about. Now, standing outside the old bookshop, his mother's legacy, he felt the walls of his new existence closing in. Could he face Emily after abandoning her? Every bill that piled up on their kitchen counter represented the dreams he'd stolen from his family. What is she thinking? He wondered, imagining the dark, sleepless nights she'd spent wondering if he'd ever return. Each question pinched his heart, prompting an unsettling cocktail of betrayal and responsibility. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The thought of facing the judgment from his neighbors gnawed at him. No longer was he the beloved teacher, he'd become the millionaire who simply vanished. How could he regain their trust, their respect? Mark's hands fisted tighter around the map, anxiety bubbling within. He imagined the whispers that would trail him, the man who once was, now a mystery that wrapped around his every move like a smothering blanket, yet deep inside, amidst the turmoil, a sense of purpose flickered dangerously bright, a revulsion against the trend of wealth without meaning, pushing him toward clarity like a beacon. He couldn't just be a millionaire, that title felt hollow. He wanted more, much more. The desire to rebuild meant investing his soul into education where it mattered most, transforming the old bookshop into a sanctuary for learning, but then reality struck. Could he live up to the worth of that vision? The echoes of his mother's dreams tugged at the corners of his mind. It was as if she was right there, urging him to rise from the ashes of his failures. Mark had to confront not just his ambitions, but the familial bonds he'd severed. Could he be the man they'd wanted him to be, or would he forever remain the ghost haunting their memories? With rising urgency, Mark found himself grappling with the enormity of his choices, standing at a precipice where success and family collided with a thunderous crash. With every increasing pressure, he felt the ground beneath him shaking, the stakes rising higher. The path back was blurred, yet destiny seemed to lean closer, whispering promises of redemption that he desperately needed to grasp. As he clenched his teeth against the mounting pressure, the tension in the air became palpable. What would he choose? Mark's breath quickened as he took a step towards the bookshop, its familiar facade acting like a time machine, propelling him back to a life he once found simple yet meaningful. The wooden door creaked as he pushed it open, the scent of aged paper and memories wrapping around him. Dust motes floated in the sunlight pouring through the tall windows, each particle illuminating the truth he had kept at bay for far too long. What began as a futile quest for validation had morphed into debilitating regret. In the dim light of the shop, he felt the magnitude of what he had left behind, the ambition that once fueled him now feeling like a heavy anchor. He paused, staring at the rows of dusty books, volumes of knowledge that had once sparked his passion and dreams. It hit him, he had sought to be a catalyst of change in education, yet he had become a mere bystander in his own life. He moved cautiously through the narrow aisles, running his fingers over the spines of forgotten literature, whispering secrets of wisdom that echoed in his mind. A flicker of an idea ignited within him. What if he could use his wealth not for self-indulgence but to create something profoundly impactful? He envisioned a community center, an innovative learning space where children could reignite their curiosity and teachers could rediscover their purpose. But the daunting question emerged: was it too late to turn his life around? His ego raged against the idea of needing help or guidance. He yearned to succeed on his own terms, yet the enormity of the task made that goal seem murky. While he had amassed a fortune, he felt like a novice when it came to rebuilding relationships and trust. After a few moments, he seized a dusty book filled with pedagogical techniques, his mother's old copy. It served as a reminder of who he once was, a teacher devoted to molding young minds. An unexpected wave of inspiration coursed through him. This book could be the cornerstone of his vision, a blueprint toward building something effective and meaningful again, yet deep inside, a voice nagged at him, warning him about the risk of overextending himself. The confidence of being a millionaire did not translate to wisdom in personal redemption. His hands trembled as he flipped through the pages, feeling the weight of his choices. A radical transformation hinged on not just his ambitions but on reaching out for help. The ringing of his phone jolted him from his thoughts. It was Emily. The number glowed on the screen like a warning siren. Each ring echoed his spiraling anxiety. He hesitated, requiring time to breathe, to gather the shards of his courage before confronting the reality he had run from for far too long. In that tormenting silence, he recognized a pivotal moment was at hand. The man he had become clashed with the man he wanted to be, and he knew what was needed: a vocal confrontation with the truth he feared most. He must face not only Emily, but the lingering shadow of his choices, the reality he had attempted to erase. Mark's determination surged. He realized now that facing Emily and discussing his vision could be the first step towards healing. With a trembling finger, he pressed accept on the call, each heartbeat emphasizing the significance of this moment. It was time to embrace vulnerability, to confront the pain he'd caused, and perhaps, just perhaps, to sow the seeds of redemption. As he heard her voice, layered with emotion and uncertainty, he wondered if this small step could lead to the monumental change he yearned for. Emily, he started, but the weight of the conversation loomed large. What would her response be? The journey towards reconciliation was only beginning, and with it, a chance to redefine what true success meant. Mark. Emily's voice was soft, but there was an undercurrent of tension that he could feel through the phone. Hey, Emily, he replied, each word feeling heavy as they hung in the air. He could envision her, sitting somewhere that felt too familiar yet foreign, holding on to her skepticism like a shield. What is going on? You disappeared. The concern in her tone was palpable, cutting through his defenses like a warm knife through cool butter. I know. I needed time to think. A wave of guilt washed over him. I've been trying to make sense of everything that has happened, everything I lost. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Mark could hear the faint rustling of what he imagined was pages turning, or perhaps her fingers tapping nervously against the table. He pressed on, I've had an idea, something I want to discuss with you. What kind of idea? She asked, her interest piqued but still adorned with doubt. Taking a deep breath, he steeled himself. I want to create a space for learning, for both children and teachers, an environment where curiosity can thrive. A community driven by knowledge, not just tradition. The words flowed, surprisingly easy and earnest, as if they bore the weight of the dreams he had buried. Mark, she replied cautiously, that's a pretty big undertaking. You haven't even been in contact with anyone from the education field for months. Exactly, he interrupted, urgency surging through him. That's why I need your help. I know it sounds overwhelming, but I can't do this alone. I need someone who understands the system, who believes in making education better. From her end, a sigh escaped, laden with the weight of hesitation. You're talking about rebuilding a career, a legacy, based on something you're still figuring out. What if it fails? I've failed before, he said, the truth bearing itself in his voice. I'm not afraid of failing again, but this time, I want to do it right. I want to be part of something where I can make a genuine impact, where the essence of learning is cherished. The word settled, wrapping around them, creating an intimacy in the space where doubts lingered. Mark realized he needed to be vulnerable, not just to seek forgiveness, but to let his raw passion lead the way. Since I stepped away from teaching, I've realized that my wealth means nothing if I'm not using it to uplift others. I want to create a sanctuary for curious minds, teachers and students alike, where everyone can learn and grow together. She paused, no doubt reflecting on their chaotic dynamic. You think throwing money at a problem will fix it? His heart raced at the accusation, tempered by the understanding that she had a point. No, I don't believe that. I want to blend that financial support with collective purpose and genuine mentorship. I can't do this without you, Emily. You know how to navigate the challenges. I just want to be part of the solution. As he spoke, Mark could feel a shift, the fog of his self-doubt beginning to lift. Okay, she said finally, her agreement neither enthusiastic nor dismissive, just a simple acceptance of the immense task ahead. If we're going to do this, I need you to be all in. This isn't just another fleeting thought. You'll have to confront everyone you neglected, repair the damage you left in your wake. Can you do that? He felt a surge of resolve flood through him. I must. Then set a meeting with the school board. They're going to want to discuss your vision, see if it aligns with their values. Mark's heart fluttered. The first concrete action had emerged from their conversation, yet he also felt the magnitude of what lay ahead. As he hung up, a wave of urgency washed over him. Could he truly navigate these treacherous waters and convince them he was worth the investment? He stood up, energy coursing through him as he began to map out a plan, thoughts racing faster than his pen could jot them down. Contacting the school board was only the beginning. This would require a strategy, a presentation, a narrative that wasn't just his but one that included every lauded teacher, every eager student, but lurking in the shadows of his optimism loomed the haunting worry: would Emily's willingness to help remain steadfast, or would her skepticism resurface? The path to redemption was complex, and he had yet to face the consequences of his past choices. Determination solidified within him as he realized if this venture was to succeed, he would need to embrace his fears, confront the ghosts of his failures, and prepare for absolute commitment. He had to convince them not only of his vision but of the man he wanted to become. Mark inhaled sharply. The time had come to address his past. With phone in hand, he prepared to take the plunge deeper into the waters of redemption without knowing whether he would sink or swim. Mark paced the small, cluttered expanse of his home office, an impulsive energy coursing through him. The walls stared back with memories of silent phone calls and evenings spent lost in thought rather than action. He grabbed a notepad, ergonomically incorrect but carrying the weight of his aspirations, and began drafting potential agendas for the meeting with the school board. His handwriting was hurried, fueled by adrenaline and a deep-seated fear of inadequacy. Each bullet point demanded that he confront not just the logistics of his proposal but the very foundation of his past choices. He paused, gripping the pen tightly as the memories surged. Decisions made hastily, opportunities squandered, relationships marred. Each failure commanded a reckoning, one he had long postponed. Was he really prepared to face the educators, the community he once neglected? With each line he scribbled, he felt more acutely the tumult of self-doubt nestling deep within him. The questions formed like a knot in his stomach. What if they saw through the facade of confidence he was trying to construct? What if they only remembered the man who abandoned his post, leaving a wake of disappointment? He needed a different approach, a way to connect to those who held his fate in their hands. Instead of merely outlining his aspirations, he would weave a narrative, his narrative, one that highlighted transformation rather than past transgressions. Perhaps by sharing his journey, he could bring them closer to understanding his intentions. This could be a testimony as much as a proposition, an introduction of a man on the precipice of change. As he immersed himself in this mental chasm, the phone buzzed, startling him. It was Emily again, and he felt an unexpected rush of comfort at her voice. "Have you started prepping?" she asked, the briskness of her tone a contrast to his inner chaos. "I'm outlining my vision," he replied, surprised at how firm his voice sounded. "But it's more than that, Em. I want them to see me, to know what I've been through, what has led me here. Silence lingered briefly. That essay risky approach, Mark. Vulnerability can be a double-edged sword. He nodded as if she could see him. I know. But I've been hiding for too long. This time, I have to be honest not just about my intentions but also about the mistakes I've made. If I'm going to move forward, I need them to understand where I came from. Emily's voice softened. Just remember, they might not be as forgiving as you hope. Have you given thought to how you'll handle pushback? They will have their doubts, their reservations. You can't assume everyone shares your vision. Mark felt a prickling of nerves at the mention of pushback. He had anticipated it subtly, yet her words crystallized the challenges he would have to tackle directly. The school board was known for being dutiful yet resistant to new ideas. He would need to prepare for questions that could unravel him just as quickly as he'd begun to weave his patience back together. I'll prepare answers, he asserted, masking his uncertainty. If they don't see what I see, I'll need to show them the potential. If I can't convince them that I've changed, then what's the point? Exactly, she replied, a hint of admiration creeping into her tone. This is your chance to prove that you can turn things around. But it requires more than just courage, Mark. It demands resilience. You must stay focused on the big picture, despite any immediate setbacks. Resilience, he echoed thoughtfully, the word resonating deep within him. Taking a breath, he understood that each confrontation with his past couldn't dilute his present intentions. It only fortified them. Mark's pulse quickened. You're right. I can't see this as a one-time meeting. It has to be the beginning of a process. I'll need to gather feedback, adapt the plan based on their concerns. I have to view it not just as a pitch but as a partnership. Now you're thinking, Emily encouraged. You've got this, but don't forget, clarity in your vision is paramount. Without that, your story, no matter how compelling, may still fall flat. As he hung up, Mark set his jaw. A partnership. This was precisely what he was after. Not just a connection to the school board, but with the educators and students whose futures would intertwine with his mission. He would need to create a dialogue that could evolve beyond that initial meeting, one that would sustain him through skepticism and skepticism alike. That he jotted down another note, be a collaborative force. The enormity of it all still loomed, but for the first time in months, he felt the tingling anticipation of possibility replace the weight of fear. The personal stakes had never felt so high, and as he prepared for the daunting task ahead, an unexpected resolve began to coalesce. He would not only confront his past, he would transform it into something that mattered. Yet even as the excitement built, shadows of doubt flitted at the edges of his determination. What if, in his quest for redemption, he unearthed something even darker lingering beneath the surface? The thoughts prickled at him, but time was fleeting. Now was the moment to move forward regardless of what lay beneath. The trembling uncertainty lingered like an uninvited guest as he clicked open his email to propose the meeting with the school board. But even with that click, an unsettling notion darted through his mind. Perhaps redemption held secrets he had yet to discover. Mark sat at his desk, the screen illuminating his determination. He scanned the words of his email, each part meticulously crafted, but the weight of what he was about to propose settled heavily in his chest. He pressed send and leaned back, letting out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The lingering exhilaration quickly faded, replaced by an anxious energy that crackled through his veins. He was now a man standing on the brink not solely of a meeting with the school board but also at the edge of a personal evolution. Deep down, he was keenly aware that this much-needed shift demanded he confront not only the board's scrutiny but also the internal ghosts he had avoided for years. That he turned back to his notepad, filled with notes and sketches of ideas still unrealized. The phrases, collaborative force, and narrative of transformation, loomed large. Yet amidst the fervor, another thought whispered incessantly, was he really equipped to navigate the labyrinth of expectations waiting for him? His past had left a jagged imprint on his psyche, a series of missteps that echoed like a haunting refrain. Each failure seemed to rise with a mocking familiarity, chuckling at his attempts to present a revamped version of himself. Could he ever outrun the man who had stumbled time and again? He gripped his pen, making fierce little circles on the paper, an involuntary reflex to dispel his frustration. Mark's thoughts drifted toward his former colleagues, the ones who barely acknowledged him after his departure. How would they react to his current stance? He knew the school board's members valued tradition, often shunning those who strayed from established norms. Each moment he envisioned them huddled together, frowning skeptically at his plans, his stomach tightened. Paradoxically, he craved their scrutiny as much as he dreaded it. His phone buzzed again, pulling him from introspection. This time, it was a text from Emily. Remember, authenticity resonates. They need to feel you genuinely believe in your vision. But what would it sound like, authentic in the face of possible rejection? Mark pondered this, the blankness of his notepad taunting him. He stood and moved over to the window, the late afternoon sun casting shadows over his workspace. The view of uninhibited space mirrored his thoughts, a mix of uncertainty and yearning. Perhaps he could share his vulnerabilities, instead of merely summarizing his accomplishments. He returned to his desk, flipping the notepad to a fresh page. Breathing deeply, he jotted, "What did I learn from my mistakes?" Drawing on the question, he wrote about the realizations he had drawn from his failures, the people he had failed to serve, the responsibility he had neglected. This honest self-reflection felt alien but invigorating, each stroke of his pen feeling like an unearthing rather than an excavation. Mark practiced articulating his story aloud, testing the cadence of his voice, gauging the emotions it stirred. "I lost my way," he muttered, doing what felt uncharacteristic, allowing himself to be vulnerable. "But in that darkness, I discovered a purpose awakened from within." The words tumbled forth, laced with urgency. Could this authenticity be the bridge toward acceptance? Yet, just as he began to feel confident in sharing his narrative, a hesitance grew dense in his throat. If he revealed the depths of his failures, what would happen if they judged him solely on his past rather than the promise of his future? He recalled Emily's caution, "They might not be as forgiving as you hope." Was he ready to gamble his future on his authenticity? This question loomed larger, demanding an extreme degree of mental fortitude, one that he craved but feared. But sitting there, the flicker of uncertainty ignited a new resolve. To confront this looming fear could transform it into strength. Yet, there was still something unnerving beneath the surface, an echo of unresolved issues that whispered for attention. As Mark reached for the phone to call Emily for further guidance, another thought pierced his determination. What if transparency alone wasn't enough? What if confronting his past revealed darker truths that he had buried for too long? With each dial tone, the urgency surged, and he suddenly hesitated, half expecting confrontation not just from the board but from his past itself. His heart raced. Maybe the meeting wasn't just a professional pivot but a personal reckoning. Would he be ready to face not just the judgment of others but the darker reflection of himself? As he pressed her number, he knew the answers he sought were more than about the proposal, they were buried within his soul, waiting to be unearthed. The phone rang, its sharp tone vibrating through the stillness of the room. Each chime felt like an electric jolt, urging him toward a decision. Mark's hands trembled slightly, betraying the calm facade he attempted to project. He envisioned Emily's reassuring voice, yet doubt gnawed at his desire to reach out. Would her guidance hold the answers he desperately sought? As the call connected, Mark forced his throat to relax. "Hey, Emily," he began, balancing casualness with a weight of urgency. But before she could respond, he dove in. "I've been thinking about what it means to be authentic in the meeting in front of the board. I want to be open about my past, but..." He felt his heart pound as he confessed, "What if they only see my failures? What if my vulnerability is perceived as weakness?" There was a pause on the other end, a pregnant silence that swelled with unspoken thoughts. Finally, she spoke, her tone steady. "Authenticity isn't just revealing your scars, it's sharing how they made you stronger. You need to frame your story as one of transformation. Share the lessons, those are powerful." Mark considered her words intently. But what if they don't care about the lessons? What if all they see is a man who faltered? Then show them the man who rose from the ashes. People connect with resilience. It's about shifting focus from failure to growth, she advised. Have you really accepted where you've come from? The question hung heavy in the air. Had he? The image of his past attempts to lead chaotic and unrefined surged through his mind. Each failure was a stone weighing down his potential. But alongside that weight lingered the insight he had gained, how to genuinely connect and listen, how to forge an environment of solidarity and understanding. I'm trying to, he replied, his voice gaining a sliver of strength. But I still feel trapped in the shadows of my mistakes. The conversation flowed into territory he hadn't expected. Emily encouraged him to unpack those shadows, prompting him to confront his fears head-on. Together, they navigated through the tangled pathways of his doubts, each question illuminating potential he had yet to recognize. After hanging up, Mark felt oddly rejuvenated. He stood at the window once again, allowing the golden light to flood over him. The shadows from before seemed to whisper instead of roar, each muted echo a reminder of lessons learned. His capacity to adapt and evolve. With renewed resolve, he returned to his desk, flipping open the notepad. The words resilience and transformation took shape on the page, words that began to drown out the fears of judgment. He jotted down specific anecdotes of how he had grown, how the experiences shaped not only his leadership style but also his understanding of empathy in education. As he composed, the boundaries between his vulnerabilities and strengths began to blur. Each realization set him on a clearer path. No longer did he see himself as a series of failures but as a tapestry of experiences interwoven with courage and growth. Yet, just as he felt a surge of confidence, a new uncertainty crept in. What would happen if the board reacted defensively? What if they weren't impressed with his attempt at transparency? Mark inhaled sharply, acknowledging this new layer of apprehension. Had he built enough of a bridge back to his past to cross it and meet the judgment head-on? His beliefs revolved around authenticity, but how much trust could he place in an audience that could very well diminish his journey with skepticism? He glanced at the clock, realizing the meeting was imminent. As he prepared to organize his notes, a sense of urgency mixed with fear gripped him. The personal reckoning awaited. It wasn't solely about the board, it was about confronting himself, about stepping into the light of acceptance even when shadows loom large. With one last glance at the speckled notepad filled with thoughts of resilience, he made a decision. He would walk into that room and let them see him. The time had come to face not just the school board or his past, it was time to fully embrace his future. He paused, mind racing. But what if, once again, he stumbled on the precipice of preconceived notions? As he grabbed his coat, feeling the residual tension curling within him, there was a lingering thought. Was he ready to unveil the man he had strived to become? The moment of truth was rapidly approaching. As Mark stepped out of his apartment, he felt the weight of his coat constricting around him, a tangible reminder of the deliberation he was about to undertake. The lobby felt unnaturally quiet, amplifying the thump of his heartbeat. He glanced at his reflection in the polished marble, noticing the way his brow creased with uncertainty. Today marked not only a meeting with the board but also a challenging confrontation with his internal critic. Each encounter with that critical voice had prompted him to question not only his capabilities but also his right to lead. And yet, the conversation with Emily lingered, her words echoing insistently, urging him to transform vulnerability into a source of strength. The crisp air outside jogged him into a sharper focus. With each step towards the school, he practiced his narrative, the anecdotes of resilience rolling around in his mind like marbles, ready to be dropped and scattered before the board. His pulse quickened with every thought. They need to understand that growth does not occur in isolation but amidst adversity. In the depths of his mind, a flicker of doubt ignited again. But what if he stumbled? What if he delivered the anecdotes poorly or struggled to maintain the emotional cadence required to connect with them? Caution tugged at him. Past failures loomed larger with every step he took, waiting to pounce with accusations of inadequacy. After reaching the school, he was greeted by the broad glass facade, reflecting the scattered clouds like a raw canvas of possibilities. Inside, the boardroom held its own stillness, almost tangible, wrapping him in a cocoon of anticipation. Mark took a deep breath and let the coolness fill his lungs. As he entered the room, the dull murmur of the members hushed. The predatory gaze of the board members took him in, each scrutinizing stare weighing differently on his resolve. He paused at the threshold, fighting the instinct to retreat into uncertainty. No. This was not merely for them, it was also a declaration to himself. Taking his position at the front, Mark cleared his throat and began. The words started flowing, recounting not just the narrative of his stumbles but the redemptive power of those experiences. He watched their reactions, some heads nodding, others etched in skepticism. But he pressed on, sharing moments of growth, times when his failures became lessons, and ultimately, embodiments of resilience. Narrating the difficulties he faced invoked a visceral sensation in him, binding his past and present in a thread of insight. He eloquently articulated how empathetic leadership emerged through the growing pains of his tenure. With each spoken word, the weight of self-doubt shifted, like tectonic plates realigning in his psyche. Yet, as he reached the crux of his presentation, a disconcerting thought sifted through his clarity: how effective could he be at influencing perceptions? The board's acceptance was raw and untested, their expressions revealed the unpredictable nature of human judgment. Mark's confidence slid into apprehension. What if the moments of vulnerability he unveiled ignited unfavorable conclusions instead? Would they ultimately perceive him as inadequate, using his narrative against him? He almost stumbled over those thoughts, pushing them back in a desperate attempt to focus on his ultimate message: authenticity fosters connection and growth. But despite his efforts, the worry remained: would they honor his journey or weaponize it? As he closed, imploring the board to consider their and his potential for growth, he felt the tension culminate in a palpable silence. Every heartbeat became a countdown. Then, unexpectedly, one member raised a hand and spoke. "Mark, have you really considered the implications of sharing such a personal narrative? What prevents it from being perceived as merely a ploy to shield your inadequacies?" The question swung at him like a pendulum. Mark felt the ground beneath him shift again, the room momentarily blurring into a swirl of anxiety. Could he really navigate this? This was more than just defending his past, it was a moment to establish who he was ready to be. And suddenly, he understood this confrontation wasn't merely with the board but an invitation for further personal evolution. As he formulated his response, a torrent of thoughts coalesced, leading him toward a decisive moment. Could he harness this to further his understanding? Or would he retreat back into the comforting yet imprisoning shadows of fear? The clock on the wall ticked audibly, each tick a reminder of the urgency of his resolution. Mark felt ready to confront not just the board but the skepticism that threatened his newfound resolve. He opened his mouth to speak again, and in that instant, every moment of self-doubt was eclipsed with determination. But what awaited him in their reaction? Would they embrace his truth, or push him back into the very shadows he fought so hard to escape? The next words might change everything. The silence in the boardroom pulsed with an electric tension, each eye fixed on Mark like the gaze of a hawk assessing its prey. His heart thundered as he faced that single question, a myriad of possibilities swirling in his mind. What if he didn't provide the answer they sought? Or worse, what if he revealed too much? But the call for authenticity echoed in his thoughts, pushing him closer to the edge of his fears. Feedback from vulnerability can be daunting, Mark finally said, his voice steady though it trembled under the weight of his introspection. To me, transparency isn't weakness, it's an opportunity for growth. My past mistakes are not ploys, they're lessons that shaped my leadership style. Each word felt like a battle cry, piercing through the lingering doubts that he watched as their expressions fluctuated, skepticism flickering beside intrigue. Was this enough to quell their apprehension, or would they use his honesty as ammunition? His thoughts raced, but instead of spiraling into self-doubt, he acknowledged a shift within him. This wasn't merely a defense, it was an assertion of his journey. Sharing my story doesn't undermine my leadership, he continued, emboldened. It reveals the evolution behind the decisions I make. It acknowledges that leadership is not about being infallible, but about learning, growing, and building a team that is supportive and understanding. I am not just here to ask for your trust. One, seek your partnership in this evolution. The board members shifted, whispering among themselves. A part of Mark wondered if his words had struck a chord or if they remained entangled in their own reservations. The tick of the clock reverberated, echoing his inner turmoil. However, he persisted, I understand your concerns. And I embrace them because you have a vested interest in this organization's future. Skepticism is a vital part of any conversation about growth. But let us also consider, what narratives do we allow to shape our understanding of one another? Are we condemned by our pasts or empowered by them? A member in the front leaned forward, brow furrowed, eyes sharp. But how will you navigate future obstacles if you view every mistake as a stepping stone? Is there a line where vulnerability becomes a liability? That question thudded against his consciousness. Mark's mind raced to articulate the significance of balance, how vulnerability couldn't be synonymous with unguardedness. Navigating obstacles requires resilience, and acknowledging my mistakes offers strength, not exposure. There's freedom and credibility in owning my journey. He sensed the tide beginning to shift. The tension from moments before felt less suffocating, his resolve swelled with each sentence. Yet another question emerged, more probing, as another board member challenged him directly. How can we trust you if your own trajectory has been one of stumbling? Striking a nerve, Mark took a breath, drawing strength from the inner turmoil. Trust is built through transparency, and I won't pretend my path has been flawless. A leader must exhibit the courage to confront their shortcomings. My experiences in navigating failures are not shields, they're what have fundamentally equipped me to lead effectively. The murmurs around the room grew. Acceptance danced with skepticism, and he recognized the beauty in this very struggle, one that was reflective of not just him, but the entire organization. It was a transformational moment, his narrative resonated beyond his personal experience. They were all part of a larger story of growth, yet, as conversations lingered in the air, a chilling thought crept back in: what if success hinged not just on acceptance but on a willingness to expose their own vulnerabilities? What if his journey would incentivize them to seek growth amid their own narratives? As he navigated the ongoing discussion, Mark felt something shift. Their dialogue had become a collective introspection, a brutal yet enlightening exploration of their own uncertainties. In this moment, he realized he was not merely answering questions, he was inviting his colleagues to join him in a profound exploration of their own leadership narratives. Suddenly, he glimpsed a gesture of solidarity from a board member, a subtle nod that felt pivotal, like the first drop of rain before a storm. Was this a precursor to something greater? Had his vulnerability ignited risk in the room that was no longer tied to his own journey but extended to the entire organization? Mark, let us discuss how we can integrate this authenticity into our collective leadership framework, the member proposed, a sense of curiosity lining their voice. Here was a pivotal juncture. An opportunity to redefine leadership beyond personal capabilities, inviting a collaborative narrative of growth and resilience. Could he stretch this breakthrough to uncharted waters? As he leaned in, excitement coursed through him, the air now rich with potential. The board wasn't merely assessing him, they were revealing themselves, exposing insights that could forge a new path forward. But as he outlined his thoughts, a new tension simmered beneath the surface. Would they act decisively for collective growth, or would fear stymie their development? The moment lingered, fraught with expectation, as possibilities soared beyond the confines of individual narratives. Would this be the turning point that propelled not only his journey but their united ascent into the unknown? The boardroom felt lighter as Mark addressed the group, an unexpected camaraderie emerging from the tension that had prevailed just moments before. Inspired by the nod of agreement he'd received, he sensed the collective momentum shift. This was a crucial moment, one where he could leverage the newfound openness. Discussing how to implement a culture of authenticity seemed manageable, yet he couldn't ignore the nagging doubt that flared within him: what if they hesitated at each opportunity to embrace vulnerability? He could almost hear the whispers of skepticism re-emerging like a phantom. Each time he stumbled across uncertainty, that misgiving crept closer to the surface. Would he allow his fears to suffocate potential? Let us be clear about what this looks like in practice, he proposed, his voice steady. To embrace this authenticity, we must create a safe space. It's not just about my narrative, it's about crafting an environment where we can all share our journeys and iterate on our experiences. There was a heartbeat of silence, a contemplative pause as he locked eyes with different board members, gauging their reactions. He hoped to convey that vulnerability wasn't just theoretical, it needed to be actionable living and breathing within the organizational framework. One woman, Sarah, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up. "So, you're suggesting meetings dedicated to sharing failures and learning lessons? Isn't that risky? What if it backfires?" Her question cut through the air. Though valid, it felt like a chink in the armor he was trying to forge together. "Risk is inherent to leadership," Mark replied, forcing himself to remain composed. "Without the willingness to explore, we stagnate. Our greatest growth often arises from our most challenging moments. If we do this right, we will build resilience individually and collectively." He watched as some heads nodded in agreement while a few faces contorted, torn between interest and apprehension. This wasn't merely a conversation, it was a confrontation with their comfort zones. They stood at the precipice of possibility, yet fear lingered like smoke. "What if we start small?" he suggested, changing tactics to lower the stakes. "Maybe one meeting a month where we each share a lesson learned. This shouldn't feel forced. It is about finding commonality in our struggles." The board's discussion heated up, voices rising and falling like a wave. Someone in the back questioned whether this softness might dilute their authority, while another countered that a stronger team required authenticity. Mark felt a flicker of pride amidst the chaos, a growing recognition of the power residing within vulnerability, but just as the conversation seemed to gain traction, another nagging thought arose: would he, too, become entrapped in the expectations of this vulnerability? The fear of being labeled inadequate persisted. Would he inadvertently showcase failure over progress? As these doubts spiraled, he pulled back momentarily, reflecting on the journey that had led him to this point. The desire not just to be viewed as a capable leader, but as someone paving a new path flickered brightly within him. Embracing imperfections must not be equated with incompetence. Amidst the buzz of chatter, Sarah returned to his line of thought. "Can we also consider how vulnerability impacts decision-making? It adds an emotional layer that we need to be prepared for." It was a brilliant observation, cutting to the crux of the issue. Mark could feel the energy shifting gears, and he seized the opportunity. Absolutely. Vulnerability should empower our strategic decisions rather than cloud them. It establishes connections that foster more creative solutions. With his heart racing, anticipation rising, he sensed that they were on the brink of something significant. As the conversation continued, each person offered insights that deepened the discussion, weaving their experiences into intricate patterns of shared vulnerability, yet Mark understood the immense weight of what he was asking. Was genuine vulnerability truly feasible in the high-stakes corporate landscape they inhabited? The stakes felt ever more pronounced as they pushed deeper into this exploration. Standing at the edge of this profound transformation, the reality began to settle: success could only stem from a unified commitment to vulnerability. But would they have the courage to consistently embrace it? As the conversation drew to a close, Mark noted how their facial expressions shifted from skepticism to cautious optimism. Before anyone departed, he posed a final question that lingered in the air. "If we commit to this, what fears might we need to confront together?" Their deliberation paused, the room silenced by the weight of his inquiry. It was a loaded question, and the answers could shape the trajectory of their future. What would they discover about themselves and each other when risk met authenticity? The hushed anticipation was palpable, marking a new chapter on their journey towards a more authentic leadership style. The moment felt poised on the brink of revelation. Perhaps now was the time to unearth hidden talents and strengths that had long been concealed. Would this exploration of vulnerability forge deeper connections among them, or would it expose fractures they weren't yet ready to confront? The unfolding days would reveal the truth of their commitment. Mark stood outside the school board's conference room, an electric hum of excitement coursing through him. He had spent weeks preparing, not just for this moment to present his ideas, but for the transformation that had taken root deep within him. The nerves that once threatened to engulf him were tempered by a resounding sense of purpose. He was ready to embrace the man he had spent months becoming. Today's presentation would not merely be a reiteration of a vision, it would be a testament to his growth, a vivid portrayal of a journey that carried the weight of both disappointment and hope. He was no longer the absentee millionaire, he was the architect of an evolving narrative, prepared to confront his past while crafting a future that mattered. As he entered the room, he was met with the familiar faces of the board members, lined up in a semicircle, reflecting a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Mark took a deep breath as he positioned himself at the front, letting the initial silence settle around them. "Thank you for having me here today," he began, his voice steady with conviction. "Today isn't just a proposal. I'm here to share a piece of my journey, one that I want to intertwine with ours. This isn't just about my past mistakes, it's about how those experiences have transformed my vision." He felt the static tension shift as he recounted his years as a dedicated teacher, the joy of igniting a passion for learning, and the subsequent detour into the world of success that had drawn him away from what truly mattered. Mark shared the story of how the pursuit of wealth had dulled his connection to his family and community, morphing into a spiral that nearly extinguished his desire to contribute meaningfully. It was raw, it was vulnerable, and it resonated with the collective spirit present in the room. "Every mistake I made taught me the importance of empathy, connection, and authenticity," he stated, unwavering in his delivery. "I realized that true leadership isn't simply about guiding others but about fostering an environment in which everyone feels safe to share their experiences, both wins and losses." Mark noticed nods among the audience, a positive sign that his message was sinking in, and he pressed on. He unveiled his vision to create an innovative learning center, a haven where curiosity would flourish, intertwining community with education itself. His articulation of the project detailed how re-establishing trust through shared stories and collective growth could cultivate a vibrant space where collaboration replaced isolation. As he spoke, he engaged not just with facts and figures but with a genuine invitation to join him in a collective journey towards growth. "What we need is transformation, not just in our processes but in the way we perceive our roles as educators and leaders," he declared. The board members leaned forward, listening intently, drawn into the tapestry he was weaving. "This initiative isn't about throwing money at a problem, it's about realigning our purpose with our practice," Mark emphasized, invoking a shared responsibility that echoed within the conference room. When he finished, an electric silence fell. Then one of the older members, a veteran teacher with years of experience, spoke. "Mark, your narrative is powerful. But how do we know this isn't just a fleeting thought? How do we know you're committed to seeing this through?" The question cut straight to the heart of his fears, but instead of retreating, he embraced it. "You're right to question my commitment. My past haunts me daily. Every choice I made affected not just me but those around me. However, I'm prepared to invest time, effort, and heart into this. I'm committed to show up, and I need your commitment too." The dialogues continued, oral exchanges weaving through the room with enthusiasm tempered by genuine inquiry. Barriers began to dissolve as ideas integrated into a collective vision. Each member unfolded their hesitations, and Mark's patience prevailed as he addressed each concern, seamlessly entering into a conversation rather than a presentation. By the time they reached a decision, the atmosphere had transformed. The board voted unanimously to move forward with his proposal, and in that moment, Mark felt an incredible release of validation of both his efforts and the newly forged relationships that enveloped him in supportive camaraderie. Walking out of the boardroom, he felt an unprecedented weight lifting off his shoulders. He hadn't just presented an idea, he had earned respect, autonomy, and recognition. Most importantly, he had shared a part of himself that had been neglected for too long, showcasing the man he aspired to be rather than the one defined by past failures. In that exhilarating moment, he realized the true essence of success: fostering connections, embracing the power of vulnerability, and transforming setbacks into stepping stones. As he left the school, the sun painted a golden path ahead, illuminating not just his vision but the possibility of a meaningful partnership in education and community. Mark's heart swelled with a newfound confidence. He was no longer merely a name on a ledger but a valued ally in the pursuit of collective growth and transformation. Without a doubt, this was more than just a professional accomplishment, it was the dawning of a deeply satisfying journey toward genuine fulfillment. Now, as the next chapter in his life unfolded, one thing became clear: it was time to pay it forward. This journey had filled him with the urgency to act and make a significant impact. In this transformative moment, it was imperative: if you believe in the power of personal growth and stories of redemption, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this narrative with friends who need to see that transformation is possible. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and don't forget to comment your thoughts and reactions about this unreal journey. Your engagement not only matters, it makes a difference. Join the movement, because together, we are unstoppable.